Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask the first question to the ground guys, General Casey and General Amos. Both of you in your opening statement talked about your great percentages on recruitment and retention, and that goes all the way across the services. And the report states that there are 23.7% would leave or think about leaving sooner than planned. The question I'd ask the two of you is, how would you face a 23% drop in retention? What does that do to you, General Casey? Or start with you,
Senator. Projections on retention are historically overstated. In other words, just in our normal retention business.
Okay, let's assume it's overstated by 50%. How would you handle the 12% drop?
It could have an impact, Senator, and that's why I said in my statement that I thought there was an increased level of risk over low for our ability to recruit and retain the force. So I think it would be an increased level of risk, but because they wouldn't all walk out the door at the same time, I think it would be an acceptable.
Okay, now that's on retention. Now, also, they had some figures that would cause a drop in recruiting too. So I would assume that you'd feel the same way about that. Do you agree with that, General Amos?
Sir, I agree with my colleague, General Casey, in that I think it's overstated. My instincts, as I read those figures and just knowing the Marines for 40 years, I don't sense the same level of impact either on retention or recruitment. Right now, if you want to join the Marine Corps, you're going to wait 8 months from the time you sign up today in the recruiting office. It'll be 8 months before you can ship. I just don't see that would have an impact.
All right, that's fair. General Roughead, I believe that you're the one, or I'm sorry, Admiral Roughead, in your prepared statement, you stated that 60% of the sailors believe the impact on effectiveness and readiness, unit coercion, and moral would be neutral or positive. Now, on the chart 71A, it shows that positive would be 13.8%, negative 35.3%. Now, I can see you also said neutral, so the no effects would go up there. But if they did that, it still is more positive than negative. How would you come up with 60%?
What we looked at in all areas where I paid attention to are a series of questions in the survey that captured the general attitudes, or what I would consider the negativity.
Well, it appears, Admiral, that you put the ones in the category equally as positive as negatively, all in the other category, and because that adds up to 60%. I just thought there might be something other than this that.
No, sir. I mean, as you look at the positives and the neutrals, we see within the Navy a positive to neutral effect on this. There are certain areas, as I mentioned, specific areas that we looked at more deeply.
I appreciate that. And I don't want the answer now, Admiral Pat, but for the record, I noticed on that same chart, and I didn't notice it until we sat down today, that for some reason in the Coast Guard, the positives are 10% to 44%. And so for the record, I'd like to know why so many of the Coast Guard people are opposed to the repeal as compared to the other services. Just for the record, give that to me. We talked yesterday about the fact that only a third of the people responded to this survey, and I have felt that the reason for that was that they weren't really asked the right questions. I mean, they never asked the question, do you think we should repeal? Don't ask, don't tell. The question they were asked was, and this is in the instructions they said, next, our mandate was to assess the impact of appeal of don't ask, don't tell, and how best to implement and repeal should it occur. We were not asked to determine whether the don't ask, don't tell law and policy should be repealed. Can anyone tell me why that question shouldn't have been asked? Or let me ask you, General Casey, should that have been asked?
Senator, I don't think I don't think so. I don't think the survey should have been a referendum of a poll of our soldiers. This isn't a democracy in the military, and I believe the way that the survey was executed gave us sufficient information to make our judgments.
Anyone else think that the question of should it be repealed should have been asked? How about you, General Amos?
Senator, during my confirmation hearing, I was asked a similar question, and I made the statement at that time that I was pretty confident, after having gone through all the questions myself, that I would come away as a service chief with a real sense for whether they support it or not. So, sir, I'm with the Secretary of Defense and my colleagues. I don't think that we needed a referendum-type question on that. I got the information I needed. With regards to the low turnout, I would suggest that perhaps there was a sense of inevitability when the survey went out.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and now that was sensed certainly by then Commandant Conway, and he in turn went out to his Marine Corps and said, "Okay, Marines, this is set that aside. We need your honest opinions on this thing." And then our inputs jumped up almost 2- or 3-fold. So well, I think we got what we needed, Senator.
Going from the time that back when I was in the United States Army, if they wanted to get some results, they'd give a survey and say, "Fill it out." We could have had 100% response. I think that's probably what should have taken place. On this information exchange forum, a lot of work was done there. The Comprehensive Review Working Group conducted 95 information exchange forums. They contacted over 24,000 service members, 140 smaller focus groups. This is quite an extensive thing, and they came up with a lot of information, but really not the kind of information that I think that we could have come up with. In Chapter 6 of the report, on page 49, it states, "If the working group were to attempt to numerically divide the sentiments we heard expressed in information exchange forums, online box entries, focus groups, and confidential online communication between those who were for or against repeal of No National Hotel, our sense is that the majority of views expressed were against the repeal." You know, why, instead of just saying against the repeal, would any of you like to have the information as to what to quantify that in some way? I mean, was it going through all these working groups? I'd ask the question, shouldn't that have been quantified in some way? Or if not, why go to all this expense and time of having this if we're not going to get any results from it? Anyone want to respond to that? General Amos?
Sir, I read some of the anecdotal comments that kind of came back that were recorded. I think there's value to get a sense for what the services felt, what the servicemen and women felt. I think they got that. I don't think there's any question that the sense that I got, it was probably predominantly negative as related to Marines. I think there's also a sense of group dynamics that in any group, when you bring a bunch of Marines together, you bring 300 of them together, there will be a sense of a little bit of the stampede theory. And so I don't know how they could have done that. I've thought about that. I've wondered because it would have been, my sense is probably along your lines. Wouldn't it have been nice to be able to quantify that? I just don't know how they could have, because it was all verbal and it was done in a group setting with group dynamics.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would only say that it's an awful lot of expense and work for not getting out and specifically getting results, in my opinion.